Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Month of Pokémon. So as we all know, Pokémon was an enormous success when it was released here in America. Whether it was Pokémon Red, Blue, Yellow, just about every kid in the nation was struck with Pokémon fever. Now it'd be some time before we were introduced to Generation 2, but in the meantime, Nintendo decided to release a few other games to curb our appetites. In February of 2000, Nintendo decided to release Pokémon Stadium for the Nintendo 64. Now, when this game was first released, I was in anguish. You see, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I was strictly on the PlayStation side of things when it came to new games. Seeing that I was just entering my teenage years, I couldn't afford an N64 because, well, I didn't have a job, no income. It didn't help that I couldn't get Super Smash Bros. When it was first released, but to have a game where you can battle Pokemon like you do in the handhelds only in full-fledged 3D was just torture. Well, ever since my visit to Too Many Games Expo earlier this July, I was finally able to get my hands on a used copy. Yeah, it's way past its prime, but I figured, let's give it a look anyway.
Actually, to those who know their Pokémon trivia, this was actually not the first game in the Stadium series. In fact, back in Japan, this game is known as Pokémon Stadium 2. The original Pokémon Stadium was a Japan-only release that only featured 42 of the 151 Pokémon, with most of them just being the final evolved forms of certain Pokémon. I don't exactly know why they chose to feature only a limited amount of Pokémon, but in the end, there was a high demand to make a Stadium game that featured all the Pokémon from the first generation. The end result in Japan was Pokémon Stadium 2, which was going to get an international release, but since we Americans didn't get the original Pokémon Stadium, this game was relabeled as Pokémon Stadium 1. It's kinda similar to the whole Final Fantasy naming issue back in the early 90s. Anyway, like I said earlier, this was always a game I wanted to own since its initial release. While I didn't get to own an N64 until a few years later, my first experience with Pokémon Stadium was back when I was an 8th grade student. My friend brought over his N64 to class because it was approaching summer vacation, and we just wanted to relax a bit before leaving the facility for good. When I first played it, I was ecstatic. I was playing a Pokémon battle in 3D. Unfortunately, that good time didn't last forever, and before I knew it, my Pokémon hype was slowly fading away. By the time I got around to getting my own Nintendo 64, I didn't really care for the game anymore. It wasn't until earlier this year where I finally picked up a copy of the game because I had to get ready for Month of Pokémon. So yeah, it's been over a decade since I last played Pokémon Stadium. Does it still hold up? Let's find out. So what happens when you take the battling mechanics of the handheld Pokémon games and place them on a console? Well, you get Pokémon Stadium, where you can spend all day battling countless amounts of trainers and Pokémon in an attempt to become a Pokémon master. Unlike the mainstream games, there's no RPG elements like any overworld, characters, any dialogue of any sort, and for that matter, any real story. You're just battling on and on again until you feel like turning the system off. Pokémon Stadium does offer a variety of game modes. Stadium mode contains 4 different competitions that come with their own set of rules, which are conveniently listed for you to read and understand. The Pika and Petite Cups are simple and easy competitions to jump in, but the Poke and Prime Cups are pretty much no-holds-barred matches that have different difficulties. The Gym Tower allows you to slowly climb up the ranks as you take on all the gym leaders from the Kanto region, ending with you taking on the Elite Four and finally your rival, Blue. There's also Free Battle Mode, which allows you to take on a friend in a possible 6-on-6 battle. Now, one of the main selling points of Pokémon Stadium was the transfer pack that was included in each copy of the game. It allowed players to hook up their copies of Red, Blue, or Yellow to the controller and transfer their Pokémon into the game. Not only could you see your Pokémon battle in 3D, it was also necessary if you wanted to get some exclusive Pokémon, like a Pikachu who knew the move Surf, or a Psyduck that knew the move Amnesia. Since I got this game used, I don't have the transfer pack. But even without the device, you weren't completely out of luck. You see, if you couldn't use your own Pokémon from the handhelds, you could use this game's rental Pokémon. With rental Pokémon, you can create a team of 6 Pokémon from a selection of up to 149 Pokémon available, with the exception of Mewtwo and Mew. Now, even though that sounds amazing, there's one major downside to this. Rental Pokémon, well, suck. Well, what I really mean is that their move pools suck and are just downright inconsistent. For one thing, all rental Pokémon share the exact same level, so not only could you choose a level 100 Charmander, you can also choose a level 100 Charizard. You're probably thinking, well shit, of course I'm going to choose the Charizard, it's just so much better. Well, in terms of overall stats, yes, but without any moves that take advantage of Charizard's fire type, it's all rather moot. I mean, if you raised a Charizard, it wouldn't have Fire Spin, it would most likely have Flamethrower, which is just a better fire type move in general. My Charizard certainly wouldn't have Mimic, they would have moves to take advantage of my Pokemon's strengths and my enemy's weaknesses. Who raised these Pokemon? Unfortunately, this problem pretty much spreads across all the rental Pokemon. This game really wants you to use your own Pokemon from the handhelds, but if you don't have the transfer pack, like me, you're pretty much stuck with these rentals. And don't get me wrong, it's very possible to win a ton of battles by utilizing rental Pokemon correctly, but it accentuates another problem I have with this game, the battles themselves. Now to this day, I still think Pokémon Stadium is a great looking game for the Nintendo 64. All the models are greatly detailed and spot on from the handhelds. Just look at that ass face Magmar's packing. It's also great to see all of your favorite attacks given the console treatment and see what they look like when brought into the 3D world. In terms of battle mechanics, it's pretty much exactly the same as the handheld titles. Now for a handheld game, it's perfectly fine, but for a console game, it can drag tremendously. I'm sorry, but the battle system from the handheld games does not transition well into 3D. It just feels disjointed and incredibly clunky. I know that sounds odd, but the shift to 3D just really makes it apparent. When I'm participating in Pokemon battles on the handheld, they can be fast, frantic, and fluid. Hell, you can even turn off battle animations if that wasn't fast enough for you. Here, especially with rental Pokemon, you have to watch each and every single move over and over again until one of the Pokemon drops. It's especially aggravating when your Pokemon performs a particularly flashy move and then the game states that the attack missed. Then there are times when your Pokemon are afflicted with status conditions like sleep or paralysis, and the battle is just prolonged because your Pokemon can't do anything. Shit like that annoyed me in the handheld games, but here it's just painful to watch because of the added animations. Another thing that bothers me is just the amount of battles you need to complete in order to achieve anything in this game. In order to win against the gym leader, you have to face 3 trainers before doing so, each packing 3 of their own Pokemon. And in Stadium mode, you have to defeat 8 trainers, each sporting 3 Pokemon, just to win 1 trophy. That means if you won all the championship trophies in, say, the Prime Cup, you have to win 32 trainer battles, which equates to 96 individual Pokemon battles. That's just tiring. All that just to unlock a Pikachu with Surf or a battle with Mewtwo? No thanks, I think I'll stick to the handheld games. Since battling is the main focus of Pokémon Stadium, I'm sad to say it doesn't hold my interest for very long. Yeah, Pokemon battles are a key focus in the main titles, but there was also people to talk to, places to explore, and the joy of raising your own Pokemon. Here, it's just battles, and that can be fun for only so long, especially without the transfer pack. While there is a kids club mode, simply put, there are many games that I guess you can play to take the edge off from battling, but overall, they're not very enticing. Some are just plain dull, and the others are just a pain to play. They're not all bad, and hell, I even got a laugh with the Magic card game because of how ridiculously morbid it is, but Kids Club is no Mario Party. There's also a gallery where you can take pictures of your favorite Pokemon. It's not much, but did Flareon just shake its ass at me? Did Nidoqueen just shake her assets? Anyway, if you want, you can take your pictures to your local Blockbuster and print them out at the game station. Oh, wait. Graphically speaking, it's great, especially from the Nintendo 64, and the music is all remixes of your favorite tunes from Red, Blue, and Yellow. Speaking of which, I'm surprised I forgot to comment on the music from Generation 1 during my review. It's fantastic stuff, especially the battle and travel themes. If there's one thing that can enrich a video game experience, it's great music, and the first generation certainly delivers on that aspect. In the end, Pokémon Stadium should only be approached by those who actually have the transfer pack to make the battles more comfortable, but even then, the battle mechanics from the handhelds don't transition well into 3D because of how long and drawn out the battles can potentially become. Yeah, you can always save your progress and conquer battles little by little, but I think that kind of game design is better suited for a handheld and not a console game.
Well, that was disappointing. Do you think it would have mattered if I actually had the transfer pack so I could transfer all of my favorite Pokemon into the game itself? Then again, it wouldn't really matter at this point because, like I stated earlier, the battery pack on this thing died long ago, so I can't save games. So even if I wanted to, I can't. So I guess this is the part where I tell you guys to stay tuned for Pokemon Snap, but I don't want to end the week on this note. I mean, couldn't really fully explore the game. But what else can I look at? Stupid doll. I don't even know why I fucking bother. Your head is so god